The views and opinions expressed on America's Workforce Union podcast and its digital media channels are solely those of the speakers and do not necessarily represent the views and opinions of the producers or sponsors.
Welcome to the America's Workforce Radio Podcast, the flagship production of the American Workers Radio and Podcast Network, where organized labor and its never-ending fight to protect the rights of the American worker come first. Now, presented by LIUNA, Laborers International Union of North America. Here's your host, Ed Flash Ferentz.
Budget cuts proposed at the Department of Labor could mean millions taken away from OSHA. Meanwhile, the National Labor Relations Board ordering a cannabis company to bargain with the food and commercial workers. And today on the show, the president of the Bricklayers and Allied Craft Workers. Welcome to the Thursday, April 9th edition of America's Workforce, where we're available on at least 5 platforms, including YouTube, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and Pandora. This being Thursday, it's Trades Day here on America's Workforce, and I am proud to say that Tim Driscoll, who is president of the International Union of Bricklayers and Allied Craft Workers, will be our featured guest. The website you want to go to, lots of information posted there, is bacweb.org. A little background on Tim. He is a second-generation bricklayer who began his career back in 1985. That was with Local 3 in Massachusetts, where he served his apprenticeship and worked on numerous commercial and institutional projects throughout the Boston area before traveling for work in the early 1990s and eventually settling in the Washington, D.C. metro area and joining Local 1, which encompassed Maryland and Virginia and the District of Columbia. His service with the International Union began in 1995, and he's been president since 2020. We're going to talk about, we'll get into what's going on with the bricklayers across the country, what he sees as the future of work. And I'll tell you, artificial intelligence is touching everything in America, including the trades, specifically the design of buildings. We're going to get into that. We're also going to touch on immigration, misclassification of workers. This is huge, especially in the trades. And a lot of communities are losing tax revenue because of misclassification. Everybody's an independent contractor today. You don't work for a company. Tim Driscoll, our featured guest right here on America's Workforce for Trades Day. Now, a brief look into the world of labor. This segment brought to you by Boyd Watterson Asset Management. We're talking almost $40 billion of assets under advisement, serving the needs of Taft-Hartley funds, corporations, public funds, endowments, foundations, as well as religious organizations. You can find more at boydwatterson.com. President Trump's newest budget proposal would slash the Department of Labor's current $13.3 billion budget by 26%, with agencies like OSHA, Wage and Hour, and MSHA each losing tens of millions of dollars. A model of last year's proposal to cut the budget to $8.8 billion. The new budget, this is for 2027, includes many of the same controversial provisions which were rejected in the spending bill passed earlier this year, such as eliminating the Jobs Corps, a program designed to provide vocational training for low-income youth. Now, most of the reductions would come from the department's personnel compensation budget. So that's certainly one to watch here. A lot of these budgets, though, they do go nowhere. Hopefully this one will go nowhere. The National Labor Relations Board ordered cannabis company Curaleaf to recognize and bargain with the United Food and Commercial Workers Local in Oxford, Massachusetts. The company defended its refusal to bargain with accusations that the union was improperly certified by an April 2024 election, but the 3-member panel rejected the company's claims as without merit. Mind you, Curaleaf is one of several cannabis companies around the country that have faced sanctions from both the Labor Board and state agencies over their labor practices. Now, as cannabis employees navigate the uncharted waters of unionizing in a workplace which actually remains illegal under federal law, state laws have sometimes facilitated organizing. Curaleaf filed suit last year against the New Jersey Cannabis Regulation Commission in efforts to have the state's labor peace agreement requirements preempted by federal law. Now let's go to Colorado, where multinational meatpacking plant JBS USA has agreed to go back to the bargaining table with the United Food and Commercial Workers. That would be Local 7. This follows a 3-week unfair labor practice strike. JBS accepted the union's offer of an unconditional return to work starting this week. As we reported back in March, about 3,000 employees went to the picket line in the largest strike the industry has seen in more than 4 decades. And healthcare is a big issue there. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, the president of the Bricklayers and Allied Craft Workers. Once again, you're listening to America's Workforce.
You're listening to America's Workforce with Ed Flash Ferens.
It takes LiUNA to build North America's infrastructure. From roads and bridges to schools and skyscrapers, the men and women of LiUNA, the Laborers International Union of North America, build the projects we depend on. From constructing the Freedom Tower on the site of the former World Trade Center to untangling Washington, D.C.'s congested interstate, LiUNA members do the work that matters. Find out what it takes to be built by LiUNA at liuna.org. That's liuna.org.
America's Workforce is sponsored in part by Boyd Watterson Asset Management, LLC. Find out more about our investment solutions tailored to meet the needs of Taft-Hartley funds at boydwatterson.com.
This segment of the show is brought to you by the Brotherhood of Maintenance of Way Employees Division of the International Brotherhood of Teamsters. For more information, please visit bmwe.org. Hire union musicians. Call Music Talent of Cleveland at 216-881-1802. Call Music Talent of Cleveland as your dependable source for professional musicians in Northeast Ohio. Union musicians add harmony to weddings, elegance to parties, and uplifting music for all events. Music Talent of Cleveland contracts solo and ensemble musicians as well as bands and orchestras for single engagements. So hire union musicians. Call Music Talent of Cleveland today. 216-881-1802. America's Workforce is presented by the Laborers International Union of North America. Feel the power right now at liuna.org. America's Workforce is brought to you in part by the Communication Workers of America. You can find more at cwa-union.org. Founded in 1887, the Brotherhood of Maintenance of Way Employees Division of the International Brotherhood of Teamsters represents the employees responsible for tirelessly constructing and maintaining the national rail system in America. For more than a century, the Brotherhood of Maintenance of Way Employees has proven they have what it takes to protect its members and meet the ever-changing challenges of the rail industry. Today, the BMWED continues to fight for job security, fair wages, better benefits, and safer, more modern work environments. For more information, please visit bmwe.org.
Now, back to America's Workforce. Here's Ed Flash Ferens.
And remember, you can check us out on Facebook or follow us on X, formerly known as Twitter. That would be AWF Union Podcast, AWF Union Podcast. Well, today being Thursday, it's Trades Day. Every Tuesday and Thursday here on America's Workforce, we feature a specific trade. And the trade of the day today is the Bricklayers and Allied Craft Workers. And we got the top guy, and that's Tim Driscoll, who is the president of the Bricklayers and Allied Craft Workers. The website you want to go to is bacweb.org. Let me repeat that, bacweb.org. We're talking 75,000 members across the country and growing, I might add. Tim, welcome back to America's Workforce. Thanks for joining us today. I'm glad we worked this out because I want to catch up with what you're doing over there with the Bricklayers, the future of work, immigration, workers' rights. There's a lot to cover here. But how are you doing over there? How's everything going at the Bricklayers in D.C.? Let's start right there.
Thank you. We're doing well. Thanks for having me on. It's always a pleasure here to be with you, Flash, and we look forward to being able to touch on some of these issues. So the bricklayers are doing well. Work remains steady across most parts of the country. Like everything, there's always spots that could be better, but we're feeling confident about the coming year.
Good, good. I bring that up too because, in the previous administration, we had the Bipartisan Infrastructure and Jobs Act. And I tell you, we need to build and rebuild our infrastructure because it's aging. It's coming down in various parts of the country. I hear that that's been kind of pulled back a little bit. What do you know right now about that moving forward?
Yeah, no, big time. Look, when ILJA, the Infrastructure Act, was passed, and that's going back 3 years ago now, the promise of that needed work, right? And first of all, needed, right, to make sure the country remains competitive on so many different levels, whether we're talking about road infrastructure, transportation infrastructure, water, and that has spillover effects into everything, right? Our schools, our hospitals, all the communities we live in desperately need that investment. And it has been peeled back slowly in the last year under the current administration. And we're going to make the case that that needs to be a litmus test for where any elected official wants to be relative to labor.
Now, let me ask you about the states because some states have amped it up a little bit and it's hard to make up what the federal government has taken away here. But what are you hearing about various states in the country right now?
Yeah, look, the states that are trying to fill that gap, and you're right, it's a huge gap that no single state can do on its own. But look, those leaders in those states that are taking that step, they recognize that if they want the citizens of their states to be leaders, to have a place where they want to raise families, these investments have to be made. And they're going to pay off in the long run because businesses are going to situate themselves where they can foster that kind of community that allows their workers to have a quality of life, because that's what this is about at the end of the day. People want to talk about wanting better things for families. The way to do that is to invest both in the workers and the communities they live in.
Tim, let me ask you, because of what's going on right now, I can only assume that you're getting a little more vocal in the halls of Congress. You got a lot of friends in Congress on both sides of the fence. I'm just wondering how we're doing respectively on that, because like you said, this has to be done. We have to continue to rebuild America. What's your take on that?
And you said it right. There are friends on both sides, right? These are American issues, right? This isn't an R or a D issue, right? People want to advance their communities, right? They may have different methods. They may have different ideas about how it's getting done. But I think as time goes on, more and more people are seeing that if you're not investing in workers, if you're not investing in their communities, if you're not offering them that better opportunity for life, then you're just flapping your gums. And I think come November, we're going to see where folks stand on that. And it's going to be those that are standing with workers that have the better day.
Yeah, I think we're seeing some of that already. Let's talk about organizing. It's not what you call a union-friendly climate. There's been attacks, especially on the public sector unions and federal sector unions. That being said, how are you doing when it comes to organizing? Because you know how this goes, Tim. If it's an injury to one, is an injury to all. If the corporate interests get their way in the public sector, they're going to come after those in the private sector. You know that. I'm just wondering how you're positioned for that.
Absolutely. Look, our brothers in the public sector, particularly at the federal level that have been under attack, we are going to remain supportive of them in any capacity that we can, because you're right. When they finish coming for one, they're going right down the line. Our challenges are different within the construction industry, but our goals are the same, right? Those people engaged in working in our industry deserve something better. And that's just as true for our brothers and sisters in the federal and state workforces.
What about misclassifying workers? I think the last time you and I had a conversation on this show, we really got into that. And I've been looking at some numbers on this, and it's ridiculous when it comes to to how many people are actually misclassified. And that is tantamount to wage theft when you take a look at the whole situation.
Absolutely. Look, misclassification is not something new. It's something we've been battling both as a union, but as a society for literally 100 years. But it's taken different forms, right? The latest piece is gig workers, right? We hear about people wanting to be quote unquote independent contractors, right? Because it gives them the freedom to schedule work as they see fit. All these nice talking points that kind of evaporate when you get down into the weeds. So we know this in construction, approximately 2 million workers to this day are currently misclassified as independent contractors. Okay. You cannot be an independent contractor in construction as a bricklayer, as a tile setter, as a concrete finisher, working for a contractor that is going to determine where you work, when you work, what your schedule is, what materials you're going to work with. It's largely an attempt by employers who don't want to carry the burden that they should, which is pay people decent wages, give them benefits, pay workman's compensation, make sure folks enjoy all the benefits of being an employee. And look, it's startling to us because there are some efforts in Congress from our not friends that are attempting to make it easier to misclassify workers. And that's something we have to fight because we encounter it every day. We have low road contractors that will put up a building and claim, oh yeah, I have 142 independent contractors all working for me here today. That just doesn't fly.
You said there's some people in Congress that want to make it easier. Easier to misclassify. You got to explain what they're trying to do here, Tim.
Sure. So it takes all sorts of, as you would guess, sort of cute names, what they name their bills. It's the Portability of Benefits Act. It's the Right to Maintain Independent Contractor Status Act. What it would do is it would change the test of what it is to be an employee or worker. Right now, there are various methods of determining that, but if a duck quacks, we call it a duck, right? These people want to suspend what's right in front of our eyes. And in large part, let's face it, this is driven by some mega corporations, whether we're talking about the Amazons, the Ubers of the world, right? The folks who want to have folks working at substandard terms because giving that designation of employee to that individual would suddenly require them to actually have to treat these people with a little bit of respect and actually pay them some fair wages.
Yeah. And a lot of these contractors pay people under the table. So you what you see happening there, you got a loss of tax revenue that goes to various cities and states. So, and I know some states are a little more vigilant on clamping down on that, but on the federal level, yeah, it's pretty weak. There are responsible contractors out there. Now,
Absolutely.
Tim, yeah, don't you think, because of what we're just talking about right now, they're getting screwed on this. They're losing, good contracts here because they're being underbid by these unscrupulous contractors. I don't know how prevalent that is, but I'm sure you got some numbers on that.
No, you're absolutely right. Look, we have across the U.S. approximately 3,500 employers of various sizes, some that employ hundreds of workers and some that employ 3 or 4, right? We do everything from home building to the largest commercial and institutional projects. Those are the folks that are treating their employees, and they want to do that, right? They want to take care of the people who make money for them. And they are absolutely devastated when someone can come in, not pay the prevailing rate, not pay benefits on the workers, not cover their workman's compensation, not cover unemployment insurance, the host of things that every responsible contractor needs to do. And you said it right. It's not just those contractors, the good high road contractors that are being harmed, but it's the public. It's loss of tax revenue. But here's the other piece. We take care of our folks, right? For every hour worked, a member earns both his pay and his benefits, his health care. Well, guess where these folks who work for these low road employers who call them independent contractors, where do those workers go when they need health care? We know this. They're going to the ER room. They're showing up at places where they can't be denied care, and they shouldn't be denied care. But where that bill should be sent isn't to Joe and Nancy Public. It should be sent to that employer who didn't do the right thing and pay them the wages and benefits that allow us to take care of each other.
Tim, I'm looking here at the latest statistics. Just in the federal government, the federal treasury loses about $3 billion a year in unpaid taxes, primarily due to misclassification. Now, that does not include the states there. So this is a huge problem. It needs to be addressed. You know, Tim, I got to take a quick break here. Our featured guest on Trades Day today is Tim Driscoll. Tim is General President of the International Union of Bricklayers and Allied Craft Workers, BACWeb.org. BACWeb.org is a website. There's a union that goes back to 1865 at the end of the Civil War. Amazing. We'll continue with Tim right after this on America's Workforce. Don't go away.
You're listening to America's Workforce with Ed Flash Ferens.
American workers are sick of struggling to get by. It's time to get ahead. In the Teamsters Union, workers are winning industry-leading contracts, historically high wages, fully paid health care, and retirement benefits you can count on. Across the country, Teamsters fight alongside our brothers and sisters to secure a better life. It's what we've been doing and how we've been living for more than a century. When we fight, we win. Join us. Be a Teamster.
America's Workforce Radio is sponsored in part by the International Union of Painters and Allied Trades, District Council 6, representing painters, glazers, drywall finishers, and sign and display industry workers. They remind you that belonging to a union is your right as an American.
America's Workforce is brought to you in part by the International Federation of Professional and Technical Engineers. You can find more at ifpte.org. America's Workforce is brought to you in part by the International Brotherhood of Teamsters, where you can find more at teamster.org.
It takes LiUNA to keep America running. Over 70,000 public employees are part of LiUNA, the Laborers International Union of North America, delivering critical services such as healthcare and emergency response, as well as maintaining roads and sanitation systems. Even the National Postal Mail Handlers Union, representing over 47,000 U.S. postal workers, is affiliated with LiUNA. Find out what it takes for LiUNA to keep America running at liuna.org. That's LIUNA.org.
There is unity and strength for workers.
We are the USW.
We are the USW.
The United Steelworkers.
The largest industrial union in North America.
We represent 850,000 members in the U.S., Canada, and the Caribbean.
We work in metals,
rubber,
chemicals,
paper,
oil refining,
atomic energy, and the service sector.
We are steelworkers, standing strong and fighting for what's right.
America's Workforce is brought to you in part by the Ironworkers. You can find more at ironworkers.org. America's Workforce is brought to you in part by the United Steelworkers. You can find more at usw.org.
Now, back to America's Workforce. Here's Ed Flash Ferens.
And remember, you can check us out on at least 5 platforms. That includes YouTube, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and Pandora. And when you get an opportunity, here's what you do. Just sign up and receive our shows on a regular basis and give us a rating. We always appreciate those 5-star ratings, so please keep them coming. Also, thank you for keeping America's Workforce, the #1 union podcast in all of America, now 3 years in a row. I like that. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Featured guest today on Trades Day is Tim Driscoll. Tim is president of the International Union of Bricklayers and Allied Craft Workers. Do check out their website, bacweb.org, bacweb.org. Tim, I want to talk about immigration. You know, the attacks on illegal immigrants in this country, pretty brutal. And I know there's a lot of immigrants in the construction industry. There's no doubt about that. How many are legal? I don't know the numbers on that, but it's affecting all industries, especially in the trades. I'd like to get your position on how you're handling the situation right now, Tim. Go ahead.
Thanks, Flash. Yeah, I got to start out by saying, look, and I appreciate the shout out for our website. We date back to 1865 as the creation of our union, and immigrants were at the founding of our union. In fact, our second president and then successive presidents were immigrants, Ireland, England, Germany, all in turn. So our founding, but also the sustaining of our union and the future of our union is going to be about integrating immigrants into our union, right? They are part of the fabric of the workforce. You started out by talking about some of the activity out there and the focus on supposedly illegal immigrants. So I've got to back up and give you just one quick little anecdote here. 3 weeks ago, we had a member picked up on the streets of New York by ICE. Thankfully, within 48 hours was released legally here in this country with work authorization, picked up solely because of the color of his skin, because he fit a profile. If that's immigration enforcement, count me out. We are a sovereign nation. We absolutely have the right to determine how folks enter our country, what their role is going to be moving forward. But this indiscriminate effort going on right now to just attack people based on the communities that they come from, what they look like, that's just unacceptable. On a personal level, I'm the son of immigrants. My father came to this country in 1949 from Ireland, was sponsored by his uncle, entered the trades, went off to serve in Korea. Long story short, had a fabulous life, raised a family on union jobs, but never had his loyalty questioned. The community accepted that. And that's where we need to get back to. This indiscriminate attack on immigrants is just unacceptable. It's not who we are as a country, and it's not who we are as a union.
Tim, I have to bring this up. Some years back, this was a couple of administrations ago, there was bipartisan legislation to fix immigration. Not 100%. I mean, nothing's perfect. Let's be honest about that. But it was a step in the right direction, and it didn't pass. It didn't pass. You get the feeling they don't want it to pass, so that could be a talking point, because it definitely has become a talking point. What do you think?
Absolutely. They know this is a triggering flashpoint, right? It's always pointing at the other as the reason that someone isn't doing well. I think there are folks on both sides that do want to reach a real solution. As you said, it's not going to be perfect, but we're not going to wait on the perfect. But the moment isn't ripe right now at the moment, because this administration and a lot of the supporters they have on the Hill recognize they've got an issue that plays better in the media than actually trying to find a solution to really deal with this.
Yeah, that's been going on a long, long time. Tim, I want to talk about the future of work. Right now, you've got 75,000 members across the country. And, well, there's a lot of people kind of wondering what that future is going to bring. And we're hearing so much about artificial intelligence, and it's going to affect everybody. It's affecting everybody right now. Let's be honest about that. I'd like to get your take. Obviously, you're speaking on behalf of the bricklayers and allied craft workers. A lot of very skilled professions that we're talking, not just bricklayers here. We're talking stone and marble masons, cement masons, plasters, tile setters, pointers, cleaners, caulkers. I mean, what does the future look for them? That's my question.
It's a fair question. Yes. So AI, you can't turn on the TV or flip the page of a newspaper and not see an article on AI. Everything from the wealth of data centers being built to what it's going to mean for folks out there in work. It's not entirely new. While AI has a new veneer to it, technology is not a simple answer, right? There's always folks and moving behind the scenes. For us, again, it's not new. You mentioned a number of our trades. So for cement masons, laser screeds have been something we've dealt with for a number of years that help with the placement and finishing of concrete. We have material lifting devices now to help masons, bricklayers primarily set masonry units. We're seeing construction layout assisted devices, these robots that help print out floor and wall dimensions for workers. But we've also seen a number of attempts that haven't actually borne any fruit. The key for us is any technology that's introduced, if it's going to make our jobs safer, make the physical toll less, and provide for an equitable and fair distribution of the productivity that comes with that, we're going to have a voice in it and we're going to support that. But by the same token, if we have folks that want to simply introduce technology that displaces workers, that limits their voice on the job, or takes away the pay that their work should earn, we're going to fight that. And I think there's merit to that, not just as a moral position, but as also a defensible position for we need to attract workers to the industry. We're not going to be automatically opposed to technology, but we're going to have a voice in it. I'd offer this flash. We think the impact we're going to see more immediately, but less directly, is going to be in the design and project delivery for buildings. And by that, I mean, the traditional notion that most people have is that a homeowner or an entity goes to an architect and says, hey, I'd like this, right? The architect draws that up. The architect gets with an engineer. They come up with some plans. They send it over to a contractor, and the contractor builds that. And that model still exists, but it's kind of disappearing. It's headed into the sunset. And that's where AI is going to have a much larger role.
Yeah.
You can have these digital representations, right, of what used to be pen and paper. And in there, you're going to see design meeting construction a little bit earlier than it had in the past, right? Because it used to be someone took those drawings and they would meet construction on the job site. And that's when folks would scratch their heads and do all the things they needed to do. So now that's begets something in the industry called VDC, Virtual Design and Construction. And that's taking these digital models and trying to work out a lot of the clashes that used to happen in the field in advance. So again, not directly, right, impacting us on the job, but it is going to have an impact, right? It's going to be, did someone decide to pursue this design because someone told them, hey, you can get this much quicker, that much cheaper? And we're going to have a voice in that process, right? Because it's going to mean workers need to make sure their interests are represented digitally. And that's not an easy bridge to cross, but it's one that we're going to have to take on, and it's one that we're going to take on.
Now, Tim, with what you just said, I can only assume that your apprenticeship programs, we're talking about the gold standard here. I mean, apprenticeship programs in the trades are the best of the best of the best. I would assume that they're addressing what you just said right now?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thanks for raising that. We are, right? The typical blueprint education that would occur during apprenticeship and post-apprenticeship. Our training programs are designed to serve supervisors, foremen, and even aspiring members who want to become contractors. It's moved into a digital world, and they're right there embracing that. We work hand in glove with our contractors, right? Because we only build the projects that they get. And it's really one of the more exciting things we do is when we're able to get with contractors in a collaborative way and say, what do we need to do to make you more productive, to get more hours for our members, and then make sure we're doing it in a way that's safe, effective, and gets everybody right where they want to be. So yeah, our apprenticeship program is definitely diving into this. It's the new world.
Yeah, it is the new world. Tim, I thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today, and let's arrange another session here to talk more about what you just said, because this is rapidly changing and accelerating at the same time. So I definitely want to get ahead of this issue. Tim, is there anything else you want to add here before we button it up?
Now, Flash, again, I appreciate the opportunity to be here, and I appreciate your voice out there on behalf of workers across all the industries. We need more of this, so thank you.
Appreciate that. Tim Driscoll, president of the International Union of Bricklayers and Allied Craft Workers. BACweb.org is a website you want to go to. And that'll be it for another edition of America's Workforce. Tomorrow, National Nurses United on wage theft at a Washington, D.C. hospital. Until then, all of you have a safe and wonderful day.
That concludes another episode of the America's Workforce Radio Podcast. Thanks for listening, and be sure to subscribe so you never miss a show. America's Workforce is a production of Labor Tools and BMA Media Group. Find out more information online at labortools.com.